Master of Public Policy and the Chair of Public Policy at the University. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this session. And so we'll be having three speakers and each one will present 15 minutes and then there will be a Q&A for 5 minutes after each presentation. And there are two independent researchers and I think there is one student from the university. Did I get that right? I hope I got the presentation right. So, Ms. or Mrs. Kalyani Kumar, who you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm here.
And she will be presenting on, what is your topic, ma'am?
It's enhancing 21st century skills through experiential learning. Yeah. I have a mic if this is on. I don't know if it's working though. It's working? Do I need this then?
That's only for recording. That was only for recording. That's not.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's a lot of things to hold. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So my topic is enhancing socio-emotional learning and digital literacy through experiential learning. And I've started doing this pilot study in a low-income private school in Ranchi, Jharkhand. So a little bit on my background. I am a civil engineer academically who's moved into the social sector in 2017 and sort of been through different areas in education, delved into the startup area, ed tech, and then moved back to work again in the school space, the K-12 space. I moved back to my hometown in Ranchi last year in October, and that's when I sort of started this pilot study. I was taking care of the NEP aspects in this low-income private school in Ranchi, how to implement the new things that NEP has asked to implement within a space that's already implementing so many other things. It's a CBSE model school, so everything that comes from CBSE, MOE, all of it gets implemented within the school space. So how do we now what do we do within that space itself so that we can propagate socio-emotional learning and digital literacy using a framework of experiential learning? That's what I'm going to be talking about. A little bit of context in terms of Ranchi in Jharkhand. So Jharkhand split from Bihar when Chhattisgarh did from Madhya Pradesh in 2001. And we have not had a stable government since the last two governments. In the last 10 years of two stable governments, education has seen a lot of reform. The government has started investing some amount of their budget into education. They've gotten different people, different CSOs, different vendors to come and work in the space of FLN, especially after the Nipun Bharat was launched. And the public school system itself is not very robust. Having said that, it was also an armed conflict region. The private school space had flourished a lot. I was born and brought up in Jharkhand. I went to a private school there. So the private school setup itself had flourished a lot. Even people from really lower strata of the socio-economic society would want to send their children to a private school in the city of Ranchi. So how do some of these low-income private schools cater to that that population, that the people coming from near vicinity of Ranchi, which is also not a very well-to-do city, even after being a capital for so long. How the private schools sort of got into making education more equitable, more quality focused is what basically the context of this study is going to be. So I'm doing this with 50 kids in the age group of 8 to 10 years. Most of the pictures are all they're images which are taken from the internet because we could not get the permissions from parents to use the images from the school. And with the DPDP Act, we didn't want to really focus on children's faces in the presentation. So the two objectives of the study are improve students' emotional regulation, collaboration, and empathy in the age group of 8 to 10, and also build digital literacy, including basic computational skills and internet navigation. Internet in itself is a skill that kids are now starting to learn from a very early age. Everyone has access to mobile, maybe not to a laptop or a computer, but everyone is accessing a phone. And how to navigate that? What are certain security measures that need to keep in mind? We thought that it's very important to do that for this particular age group, and that's why digital literacy also formed a part of this particular study. Now, the rationale for using experiential learning. I know there's been so many people talking about what experiential learning is, how it's being used, how it's just another buzzword and people don't actually know how to use it. So me being like an independent researcher, I read a little bit about it. I got a fair share of experience in experiential learning during my time in Finland, where I did my master's, and I had the opportunity to work with their education ministry, with their K-12 education system, and very specifically with their early education and pre-primary education system. So that's where I sort of got my first glimpse into what experiential learning can look like. And therefore, this particular framework, which is by Dewey, talks about the cycle. It's a cycle of experiential learning where you get exposed to a concept, which is concrete experience. So you get exposed to something, what has happened, reflective observation where you think about what did I experience, moving on to why that particular phenomena is happening, and then moving to active experimentation. Now, what do I do next? Isn't that how we also live our life? Like that is the whole point of experiential learning, where you are actually doing something like you would do in a general sort of situation in your life. So which is why we sort of narrowed down to this model. And the two key concepts that I'm going to be talking about today, SEL and digital literacy, are again, we saw that there was a lot of emotional dysregulation in the child population that we were dealing with. And that being said, that also had to do, the context also had to do a lot from where they were coming from the kind of areas that they were coming from around Ranchi. Like I said, that it was a very Naxal prone region until quite very recently. So SEL became a concept that we really wanted to delve into telling, helping or sort of facilitating emotional regulation in students of this age. And digital literacy, because with our students moving to the 6th grade when they turn 12, we have introduced the subject of AI as the vocational subject, which has been mandated, one vocational subject mandated by NUP. So we thought that digital literacy at this early age would help them become closer, and especially because there's a gap, which I'll be talking about in my next slide, between students actually being able to access technology. Now, when you see SEL, there's an image of Inside Out. I don't know how many of you are aware, but it's a movie that was released by Pixar. It's one of the movies that has been used by different researchers, psychologists, to actually help children understand their emotions and of the people around them. This is also a movie that sort of gave the inspiration of how to navigate this with this particular age group, because 8 to 10 years is a fairly younger age group that we are dealing with. Next. And approach and methodology, I'll very quickly touch up upon it, that it's again a mixed data analysis model where we are using a pre-test and a post-test in the quantitative measures, and then a lot of discussions, a lot of conversations with the students, their teachers, their parents, to understand the context of these 50 children, to understand how we can then scale it to all the classes of that particular age group. The cohort size, as I mentioned, is 50 students, and the preliminary analysis is essentially going to focus on shifts in emotional regulation, their problem solving abilities, and their digital familiarity. So we are not saying that at the end of this study they'll be digital geniuses, but they will be familiar as to what they are supposed to and what they are not supposed to do in the digital landscape. Next. Expected outcomes are improved SEL skills. We are hoping to enhance their ability to understand emotions. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't put a percentage on it, because this is a study being done for the first time. I'm doing it for the first time, and it's in this context being done for the first time. So we want to see how it progresses, to see what that improvement is going to look like in SEL. Digital literacy growth in terms of understanding their comfort and their proficiency with the technologies that they use. We want to make it into a scalable model, at least for in the next 3 years, for the entire school that we are working with, and also maybe write a paper, do some more research so that we can inform policy within the Jharkhand framework with this study. In our early findings, we found out that students are showing very basic improvements in terms of understanding their emotions. So if they are feeling angry or sad about something, they are able to talk about it, which earlier they wouldn't be able to do. So if they are very angry and they are banging the desk or not paying attention in the class, talking to them helped in terms of breaking down what they are feeling. And that has been a very good sort of step towards understanding what goes on in the mind of an 8 to 10-year-old when they are not paying attention in the classroom, or when we want them to understand what they are feeling so that they can communicate it better. And then the increase in engagement in terms of when students are exposed to these activities, and we've been doing this across different subjects. So when they are taught something, they are also shown that something, so that they know what it looks like, what it feels like. They are made to hold it. If they are taught about animals, then we tried to introduce as many animals in their near vicinity so that they know what they actually look like, as opposed to the 2D image that they see in their books. The two things that we found which were really concerning for us was that connectivity issue existed for over 67% of our students of this pilot batch. Within 50 students, 67% students had very limited access to internet. And that's a problem across, maybe because of their socio-economic strata, or from the places that they come from, which are very remote, and the signal of telephone signal does not reach there. And then the device access. 25% students had no experience with digital devices. So they wouldn't have seen a smartphone before, because their parents would still be using an analog phone from much before. Next. Thank you. The three key challenges that we faced when we are still in the process of conducting this pilot is limited technology access, which I spoke about a little earlier. Varying digital familiarity. So different students within the cohort batch have different levels of familiarity. Some are very familiar, easily able to navigate the computer, easily able to navigate the phone, but there are others who are not so familiar either with the phone or the computer, and they're still trying to understand what the ecosystem, the digital ecosystem looks like. And then resource constraints in terms of it being a unaided government school. How much of these resources can we actually take on for this particular pilot study for 50 students? So these three have been the key challenges in conducting the pilot, but we're trying to navigate through and see what's the best way to sort of overcome. Now, adaptive strategies is more on the lines of mitigation of how we are going to look at improving as we move on through the pilot. Shared device usage, that's something that we introduced where one computer or one system was being used by a group of students. We are not extending the group beyond 3 because then not everyone gets access to the device. So 3 students on a system. The school itself has only 1 computer lab with 22 systems. So the students sitting together doing a device sharing. Peer learning, like I said, that there are different levels of familiarity. So how we can enable one student to help out the other student, that's how we have broken down the groups into where the students are also facilitating that learning for their partners. And offline activities, especially for SEL, how we can integrate more of these conversations, more of these focus group discussions with the children to help them understand their emotions and of the people around them. Potential of scaling the intervention, like I mentioned, we want to scale it to all 1100 students by 2026. We want to keep it a low-cost approach, so we don't want the school to stretch their budget, but within their budget, what's the best solution that we can come up with. Research support in terms of scalable low-tech solutions that we can use. And then there are multiple of them in the market right now. And then eventually how we can write a paper or do more research to then inform the government of how this space, what this space can look like. Next. Yeah. So there's data collection that's happening every 3 months, and it's going to continue for another 3 years to understand this better. We'll do an end line at the end of this academic year to see what kind of shifts have happened. Intervention refinement in the sense that based on the findings of this data analysis, then we will also ensure how we can make this intervention better for those 50 kids. We'll also decide if we want to introduce more participants into the study at the end of this academic year. And AI, the buzzword that everyone is talking about, there are so many different use cases of AI within the SEL, and we want to explore that in this pilot study as we move forward. So in conclusion, in terms of feasibility, our early findings suggest the feasibility of implementing SEL and digital literacy in resource-constrained environments. We can do that. Of course, there's an extended effort that's required, and if the school that we are participating in is ready to do that, then that's something that can be achieved. So feasibility is not something that would limit us from taking this study to scale. We're bridging the gap in terms of people who are coming from more resource constrained areas, coming together, learning from their peers, learning better from these conversations and focus group discussions. And then, of course, everything tie backs to the NEP 2020 and how it sort of helps us introduce the different interventions at different stages. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a very engaging presentation.
Home today. I'll just go with it, a new experience. I'm here to talk about a possible scalable approach to integrating 21st century skills within your school design. When I did this for my school, I had some considerable success which I would like to share with you all. A quick brief about me. I am Rohan Rajapure. I am from Mumbai. I completed my master's in physics from NIT Nagpur, after which I joined the Teach for India Fellowship. During my Teach for India Fellowship, I taught grades 9 and 10th math and science for 2 years in a public school in Mumbai. After which I joined IT schools. I joined there as a lead teacher. Right now I work as the assistant school leader in one of their newer schools in Navi Mumbai, Airoli. A quick brief about IT schools as well. we are a community of transformational schools trying to empower the most under-resourced children to create a destiny of their choice. Cut to 2022, me and my principal were discussing that at the beginning of every year when we are setting goals for the school, it's not working out, because when we are setting goals for only a year, we may not take a lot of risk and think long term. Hence, we felt the need for making a strategy document which spans for 3 years, and that's what we did. We spent approximately 6 months working every weekend making this strategy document. It was a long process which involved looking at past 3 years data, doing a SWOT analysis, reading something up about what is research telling us of what students need to succeed in career, in life. And through all of that process, we came up with approximately 10 to 15 key levers that we wanted to move so that our students reach the vision that we had set. So this is the vision that we came up with. BGR was the name of my previous school in Pune. It's in the Yerwada region. So we came up with this vision which said we want to create a blueprint that enables students to permanently escape the poverty cycle. And we wanted to empower them to make informed personal and public choices, and to enable them to make an equitable and sustainable world. So out of the 10 to 15 key levers we identified in order for our students to achieve that vision, life skills was an important part of it. Just doing academics was not going to cut it if we really wanted to do justice to that vision. So that's when we started thinking about 21st century skills. And to enable our students with those skills, we came up with a 3-pronged approach. First one was direct instruction, where we actually taught students about various essential skills. The second one was giving students the opportunity to apply these skills, and finally making some tweaks to the curriculum so that they also get some essential vocational training that they can use in their everyday life. So let's start with the first one. The first one is direct instruction. The first question was, what are 21st century skills? There are so many frameworks, there are so many opinions out there. I looked at a couple of frameworks. The one which we were closely looking at was the UNICEF's life skills framework. However, we finalized the Skill Builder Partnerships Skill Builder framework. They have made this universal framework which enlists 8 essential skills. And all of these skills are broken down into smaller steps, which makes them easy to see and to evaluate. For example, if I go to staying positive, they define staying positive as the ability to use tactics and strategies to overcome setbacks and achieve goals. And according to them, the step 0 in staying positive is the student able to identify its own emotions? Then step 2 becomes, can they identify other people's emotions? Then step 3 becomes, when things are going south, can they try to be calm and keep trying? So they have divided all of these essential skills into smaller broken down steps, which was helpful for me as a school leader who's trying to implement this program in my school. The next step was diagnosis. It's very difficult to diagnose where students are and how they are progressing with respect to skills, right? So what I did was, I developed a method where it blended self-reporting. It blended self-reporting with teacher reporting or advisor reporting and peer reporting. So this is a sample tracker. Say for example, I want to judge whether, I want to identify where, on which step is a student with respect to staying positive. So if you see at the top, I have step 0, which is, I can tell when I feel positive or negative. So the students will try to evaluate themselves. 5 being, I do that all the time. 1 being, I never do that. So the student will evaluate himself or herself. Then their advisor will also evaluate that student. And the student council member or a student leader who interacts with them a lot during their school time, they will also evaluate them. So basis on all of these 3 data points, it is evaluated whether that student is on step 0, step 1, step 2, so on and so forth. So a diagnostic was conducted where I evaluated where each of my student is on the various essential skills. Next was I made unit plans and lesson plans aligned to their current reality on these various essential skills. This is how my sample unit plan looked like. Which week, which skill are they working on, which step number are they working on, and what's the lesson plan for the same. This is how my sample class flow looked like. It began with an opening, context switch, agenda, and what is the progress made in essential skills so far. Then we moved on to recap of previous classes. We always align on some next steps at the end of every class. So are we implementing them? Are we finding some challenges? Then we move on to the teaching of that skill, where the teacher explains what is that skill, why is that skill important, and how do you actually implement that skill in everyday life. If possible, wherever possible, students also practice that skill and they get peer feedback and their teachers' feedback. Next, they write two to three next steps. What are they going to change in their behavior in order to progress on that skill? And finally, we close out the session. So that's my typical class flow for these classes. Next is I did some teacher training so that the teachers feel confident to conduct these classes. And periodically data was collected, how much are the students progressing, is it effective or not, and some tweaks were made to the lesson plans and the unit plans. Based on the 6-month pilot that I did, students showed a growth of 2 years in unit 3 and 4. So it meant that I was on the right path with respect to these essential skills. So that was my approach number 1, direct instruction. We'll move on to the next approach, which is giving the students the opportunity to apply these skills. First thing I did was I divided the students into smaller groups, and every week for 1.5 hours, I gave them a design challenge that they solved in their smaller groups. They used the 4 C's, which stand for critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration, while they were solving this challenge. Here you can see 2 examples. On the left hand side, they're trying to make costumes out of newspapers, and on the right hand side, they've been given some materials and they're trying to make a bridge which is strong enough to hold a few bottles of water. Here is the end product. On the left hand side, you can see one person wearing that costume, and on the right hand side, you can see some bottles in the hands of some students. They're trying to test whether the bridge is able to hold those bottles or not. So that's 4C challenge, as I call it, in action. At the end of every 4C challenge, they also spend some time thinking about how did they do on these 4 C's as a group and as an individual, and again they prioritize some next steps for the next challenge next week that they will do. Just to induce some inspiration, celebration into the school and to create some buzz around it in the school, I had a leaderboard which was put up on the 2nd floor of my school building. This is how it looked like. If I zoom in, and this was maintained throughout the year, from the first day till the last day of the school. So if I zoom in, this was the scoreboard, which is not very visible here. I can see that. However, on the left hand side, you all can see there are various groups, and on the top you can see there are the 4 C's: critical thinking, collaboration, communication. So the judges came at the end of every 4C challenge, judged them on these 4 parameters and gave them scores, which was always being monitored on the scoreboard. Also, just as a token of appreciation and celebration, I clicked pictures of the winning teams and put them up on the wall, just so that people feel recognized for all their efforts that they're putting. So that was 4C challenge, giving students an opportunity to apply those skills. And the third one was making some shifts in the curriculum itself to add some vocational training, vocational learning into the school. So that's where the third approach comes. So we introduced a vocational subject called as the multi-skill foundational course in partnership with Lend a Hand India, which works on this project. So the Lend a Hand India organization helped us with the curriculum and resources, and they had 4 basic modules. The first one was workshop techniques, the second one was energy and environment, third one around gardening and agriculture, and the fourth one around food and food processing techniques. Once the partnership was done, we moved on to designing the long-term plans and unit plans for the curriculum, very similar to my 4C challenge. So this is how a typical long-term plan looked like. It has the module at the top, which is workshop and engineering techniques. How many sessions will be conducted? What are we learning in that session? What are the various parts? How many classes will be needed? How many theory? How many practical? So that's how our long-term plan looked like. After that, we made a budget sheet, understood what are the materials that would be required for these classes. We did not want to just model it out for the students and end the story there. We wanted our students to actually perform those practicals to get a hang of how does it actually feel to do these activities. We kept in mind 20 students, a batch of 20 students, and made the budget sheet accordingly. So the first school that we did, so I teach is a chain of approximately 12 schools. We did not want every school to replicate it. So we made one sheet keeping a batch size of 20 in mind, and that can be reused again and again. Finally, the MSFC lab was set up. Many instruments, many machines, and the trainer was trained at Lahi. How do we run theory classes and how do we run practical classes? We again made some tweaks to that, and we finalized that the class flow that we want for our school is where in the first part, the trainer is modeling out how do you use these machines, how do you do that skill, and after that, students get into smaller groups and they try to do the same thing again together as a team. And all this while the trainer is moving around giving feedback. Finally, projects were designed which integrated all the smaller skills so that they are making some end product at the end of it. Just to give you a couple of examples, this is an image where the students learned how to use cement, and they are making a small embankment so that the rainwater does not enter their room on the ground floor. This is another example where students are learning soldering, and every school has these extensions which get damaged after a couple of years. One of their projects was to fix all the extension cords in the school. So that's MSFC in action. Just to quickly conclude, the 3-pronged approach involved direct instruction of the skills, where we are teaching them what those skills are, why are those important, and how do you apply those skills. The second was giving them an opportunity to apply these skills, and to reflect on how did they do and how can they improve on them. And finally, making tweaks to the curriculum and adding a vocational subject which they can use in their everyday life. And if for any student, if they feel like this is what I want to do, they can move up to do ITI courses, where for completing the MSFC course in the school, they get some certificate and some credits in the ITI college. Moving forward, I feel like there's one big missing piece in my approach, that everything is a different entity. 4C Challenge is a different project, Skill Builder is a different project, and MSFC is a different project. Moving forward, I would want to integrate all of the school programs to that one framework, which is the Skill Builder framework. So that's what I'm looking forward to in the upcoming years in my school. That's it. Thank you.
We can take up questions.
What is the general response from the children have been, and how are other teachers in the school feeling about this? Because sometimes it may sound, I mean, you have the advantage of it being in an IT school where people are working together, but in many other cases that may not be the scenarios.
So let me talk about the 2 programs. First is the MSFC program. I was not intending to do that. Students love the MSFC program because they get to do a lot of things, right? If you look at some of the images, first thing that I notice is students are extremely engaged. If you could see their faces, they're also smiling most of the time. So MSFC is a project where they really enjoy doing whatever they're doing. The students are loving it. With respect to teachers, especially during 4C challenge, I intentionally kept it student-led. So no teacher was involved during the 4C challenge. The entire school is working by themselves. In fact, during the 4C challenges, my principal used to take school team meetings. So teachers get some extra time to get some training done, to get their lesson plans in place, so on and so forth. So I feel like teachers, when they see it from that point of view, okay, students are getting some extra training, extra exposure, while I get some extra time to do my work, they feel good about it.
So, from this program, what has been after the 10th standard, what has been the track of these students?
What has been the track of these?
Track of these students. What are they doing? Girls was a 22.
Right. So this MSFC has been.
Do you have data for that?
So MSFC has been working in my school for the last 2 years. We have kept it as an option, okay, if someone who's really not into studies, don't want to study and really enjoys doing something, they can take up this as their profession moving ahead. I don't think so far anyone has taken. Most of them, all of them actually go ahead and join traditional colleges itself to do their 11th, 12th grade in a junior college and then go on to do graduation. So far no one has actually pursued this in depth.
I love your vision, goal which you have set for yourself. That was wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Very